Most people think the buyer pool has completely dried up and no investors are buying. And I get asked all the time, who is still buying? Or I heard there aren't any buyers. I've heard everything is sitting, and that just could not be further from the truth. Hi guys, my name is Chase Macleod, and I'm the founder and CEO of Macleod & Co. I have always had a passion for learning things I was never taught, or maybe should have been taught when I was younger. As an only child raised in a single parent home, I've always been in search of the lessons I never learned until later in life. The topics that I'm most passionate about are how to make money, how to grow a business, how to keep the money I make, all things real estate investing, how to be a better dad, how to be a better husband, and most importantly, how to live a better life. In this podcast, join me on my journey as we dive into all the topics I wish I knew earlier in life and what they never taught us. There is a massive misconception in the industrial real estate market right now. The majority of people who own or are interested in industrial real estate are completely mistaken about the current state of the market. Most people think the buyer pool has completely dried up and no investors are buying. And I get asked all the time, who is still buying? Or I heard there aren't any buyers. I've heard everything is sitting, and that just could not be further from the truth. There are a ton of buyers. Two, there is literally no inventory. And the inventory that's out there is getting 10, 15, 25 offers. There is literally close to zero inventory for sale on the market right now in industrial real estate. And if you're an owner of industrial real estate, whether you are an owner-user who utilizes the building for their business, or you're an investor that owns and leases out the industrial real estate you own, if you were to choose to sell, you would have a distinct competitive advantage. Mainly because, contrary to popular belief, investors, and specifically institutional investors, are still aggressively looking to place billions and billions of dollars into industrial real estate. And if you ask them their number one geographical preference, they would tell you Southern California is at the top of their list. It comes down to basic economic theory of supply and demand. There is next to no supply of industrial real estate for sale and billions of dollars of demand, which equates to the following. Any property actively on the market for sale will get most, if not all, of the all-cash investor eyeballs on them because the market is very quiet right now with a lack of inventory. Regardless of what type of industrial real estate you own, there is a buyer for that profile of a deal. This is very different than what most may be seeing in their local neighborhoods in residential real estate. Increases in interest rates have caused buyers to pause, asking prices of homes have started to flatten, and reduced buyer demand and velocity has caused inventory to tick up. There's more supply of inventory for sale. There's been a reduction of buyer demand in certain segments, so most are perceiving the market as flattening out or possibly going into a recession. Ironically, it is completely different for industrial real estate. The amazing thing that most owners of industrial real estate may not realize is there are investors looking for every shape, every size, every profile, every type of industrial real estate. So regardless of what configuration or condition your property is in, there is a buyer for your property. Here are just a few examples of what investors are specifically looking for. You're a business owner who also owns their warehouse and your business operates out of that facility. You realize your real estate may be more valuable than your business, which is often the case in California. You don't want to sell your business, but you need an injection of cash, or you want your kids or someone in your family to take over the business, stay in the facility, but you want to retire. There is an investor buyer for that deal. Most likely, it would structure a sale-leaseback deal, which allows the building to be sold, but the business to remain and lease back the property. The majority of investors in the market are looking for cash flow. Buildings that are already leased at solid rental rates. Why? Because volatility in the debt markets and unpredictability in interest rates, investors are prioritizing and valuing cash flow over vacancy because they need the ability to immediately service the debt and at bare minimum cover the monthly loan payments. The majority of institutional investors buying industrial real estate do still buy and close all cash. Their purchase of your facility is not contingent on a loan getting approved. The buyer is typically using discretionary money they've raised from investors in a fund. But the vast majority of them, after they give you your money after the close date, will refinance. Why is that? Typically, the interest rate the buyer is paying on a loan is lower than the preferred return that they are going to owe an investor for placing their money. We will get into a future video to discuss everything related to equity and preferred return, et cetera, as it relates to loans. But for today's discussion, the most important topic we are covering is how and why investors still want to buy industrial real estate. In spring of 2022, interest rates were so low for financing and refinancing investment deals like industrial real estate, it was very, very easy, relatively speaking, to finance these deals. Because debt was so cheap in early 22, rental rates for industrial real estate were skyrocketing month over month. Investors were actually paying more to acquire vacant industrial properties than they were leased properties, mainly because the investor's thesis was rental rates were going to continue to climb, so leasing it at tomorrow's rental rates would supposedly yield them a higher return. Fast forward to today, interest rates have skyrocketed, rental rates have somewhat leveled off, and most investors are not underwriting huge rent growth, but continuing to underwrite increases in interest rates. What does this all mean? There are still billions and billions of dollars out there and countless investors that believe in industrial real estate, but they are more cautious than they were a year ago. So sale-leasebacks have become institutional investors' top priority because the deal itself mitigates risk. The investor knows exactly what rental rate they will be getting, exactly what type of business they will be dealing with from the day of the close. And that matters because they don't know where the rental market is heading in 2023. They don't know where the debt markets are heading in 2023, but they are still mandated to get investors' money out the door and invested in quality real estate. And the number one asset class that is still on that list is industrial. Another example of what investors are still willing to buy is well-located, very functional real estate, which can be leased or it can be vacant. While most investors are still prioritizing leased industrial real estate, they are also prioritizing quality. When markets are in flux, institutional investors will use a term called flight to quality, which is another way of saying when the market is in a lull, leasing demand is low, supply and competition is high because of a spike in inventory, investors will target and prioritize asset quality, which is comprised of two things: geographic location and building attributes. Investors will want the best of the best when they are buying in uncertain times. Location is always relative, but in Southern California, it's measured by how far east are you from the ports of LA and Long Beach, or how east are you of a certain highway. The number one building specification that determines whether an industrial warehouse is Class A, best of the best, versus Class B, middle of the road, is the minimum clear height. How high is the lowest portion of the warehouse inside the building? Most investors are prioritizing any well-located warehouses with a minimum clear height inside the building of at least 28 feet or higher. If you're an owner-user of a facility like this or an investor, regardless of whether you want to lease it back or vacate it close, regardless of whether you're an investor who wants to sell and the lease that's currently in your building is under market from a rent perspective, or your tenant doesn't want to renew their lease, this is the type of industrial real estate all institutional investors are desperately looking to acquire. And the one type of property there is a massive, massive shortage of on the market. The translation is, if you own a property in this category and you have a willingness to entertain selling, the amount of eyeballs that will immediately focus on offering on your property will blow you away. Another example of what investors are still looking to buy is industrial outdoor storage, or what's been called IOS. They have many different names: truck yards, equipment yards, covered land plays, etc. The wave of institutional investor demand really started for this asset class in around 2021, and the demand peaked around 2022. There are still billions and billions of dollars allocated to acquire this new growing asset type in core markets around the country. However, investors are more cautious today about it than they were in the first half of 2022. If you own a property like this, whether you're an owner-user operating on the property or you're an investor leasing the property out, there is a very large buyer pool of household names like JP Morgan aggressively trying to acquire these type of properties. But in this new market we are all trying to navigate, there are three things investors are looking for and that you should be aware of as an owner who possibly is looking to sell. One, trucking is king. If a property is zoned by right for truck storage, trailer storage, truck or trailer repair, it is by definition gold in the world of industrial outdoor storage. Mainly because demand to lease properties approved for truck-related businesses has remained relatively high. And one of the biggest issues investors of industrial outdoor storage are facing, especially over the last 12 to 18 months, is determining who is the tenant pool these properties will lease to, and in turn, what are those tenants willing to pay? The trucking industry has remained the strongest industry throughout the bumpy few months we've been through in this market. And it's been the industry that has paid historically the highest rental rates for industrial outdoor storage. As a result, any property zoned for trucking will receive the highest purchase price offers from these investors. Second, the zoning of these properties can make or break an investor's business plan for acquiring and leasing the property. In this order, these are the zoning uses that are the highest value in industrial outdoor storage. Trucking, specifically for 18-wheeler trucks and trailers and the tractors that pull them, equipment sales and rentals, and contractor yards. If you own an iOS yard that is properly zoned for these three uses with a use permit that can carry forward after the change of ownership, after the sale, investors are still aggressively looking to buy properties just like yours. Third, and probably the most undiscussed attribute investors are looking for in industrial outdoor storage is future development upside. Originally, when investors started targeting and acquiring iOS, it was meant to be a different industrial asset class that would be leased at or shortly after the acquisition date and treated like a normal industrial warehouse acquisition, where the business plan was to increase the rental rate, increase the cash flow over time through market appreciation, or to increase through cost of living, increase the rental rates, and increase the annual increases to the rental rates, either through future renewals or future new leases on the property. Now, investors are looking for more optionality in the iOS space they are acquiring, which means not only does the acquisition need to pencil as an industrial outdoor storage yard investment that can be leased essentially in its as-is condition, it has to have the ability to be redeveloped in the future for a new industrial warehouse development. For example, if you're an owner-user operating on an industrial outdoor storage yard and you have a willingness to agree to a sale-leaseback deal with the investor, say somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and your property is properly shaped and conducive to a future redevelopment of a new warehouse distribution facility, if you check all those boxes, you will receive the highest, most aggressive offers with the most favorable terms from these same institutional buyers out in the market right now today looking to buy property just like yours.